I'm going to tell you something, after which you will never be able to stand in front of a mirror the same way again. Not because you'll see something terrifying, but because you'll start noticing what you never noticed before. And that's when you'll realize it was always there. In 2019, a man named Daniel Roche walked into a Portland police station with an unusual report. He claimed that someone was living in his house, not in the basement, not in the attic, right beside him, in the same rooms, and that this someone stood behind him every time he looked in a mirror. The officer on duty filed the report. Per standard procedure, suspected break-in complaints are processed within 48 hours. A patrol unit was dispatched to the address, searched the house, found nothing, locks intact, windows shut. Daniel had no security cameras. The case was closed the same day. A week later, he came back, this time with photographs. The first one, a regular bathroom selfie. Daniel standing in front of the mirror, a white wall behind him, a towel on a hook. Nothing unusual. The second photograph, same bathroom, same angle, taken a minute after the first, the towel hanging slightly different, as if someone had brushed against it, and the shadow on the wall, just a little longer than it should be, barely noticeable. But once you know where to look, you can't unsee it. The officer looked at the photos, then at Daniel, then back at the photos. Sir, this could be a camera defect or an air current. I know what an air current looks like, Daniel replied, and I know what the shadow of a person standing behind a door looks like. Daniel was 34 years old. He worked as a sound engineer at a small recording studio. A man whose profession trained him to notice what others miss. A stray click in an audio track. A phantom echo that shouldn't be there. A frequency off by a fraction of a hertz. His brain was wired to catch anomalies. And that's exactly why he noticed first. It all started in October. Daniel lived alone in a small two-story house on the edge of the city. A quiet neighborhood, mostly elderly couples who went to bed by 9. Daniel often worked late, sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning, editing recordings in his home studio on the second floor. One night, sitting with his headphones on, he felt something. Not a sound. He was wearing headphones. He couldn't hear anything external. It was a sensation, as though the air in the room had become slightly denser, as though the space behind his back had stopped being empty. He took off the headphones. Silence. He turned around. No one. The room was just a room. Door open, hallway, light on. He shrugged and went back to work. But the next day, while editing a recording, he found something strange. On one of the tracks he'd been recording that night, there was an anomaly, a quiet, barely perceptible sound at a low frequency. Not equipment noise, not interference, something else. Daniel isolated the fragment, amplified it, filtered it. Breathing. Someone's breathing. Steady, calm, with an interval of roughly 4 seconds. And these weren't his breaths. He cross-referenced them with his own rhythm on a parallel track. The frequencies didn't match. Someone was breathing in his studio. Over the next few days, Daniel set up microphones throughout the house. 4 of them. In the studio, the bedroom, the kitchen, and the living room. He connected them to a laptop and configured real-time recording with sound-activated triggers. The first 2 nights, nothing. The usual background, the hum of the refrigerator, the clicking of heating pipes, occasionally a distant dog barking. Daniel had almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. On the third night, the system captured a sound at 4:17 a.m., the living room microphone. Daniel opened the recording. The first few seconds, silence. Then, a quiet creak. A floorboard, one, then a 6-second pause, and another creak, as if someone were standing in place, slowly shifting their weight from one foot to the other. Then, silence. 20 seconds, 30, a minute. And then a voice, quiet at the very edge of audibility, muffled, as though someone were speaking with their lips pressed against something soft, or as if the voice were coming not from outside, but from somewhere inside the walls. One word. Daniel played it back 11 times before he could make it out. Closer. He could have left. Any normal person would have. But Daniel was a sound engineer. He needed to understand the source. Not to believe, not to fear. To understand. To explain. To find a rational cause. He bought 2 night vision cameras and installed one in the living room, the other in the hallway between the studio and the bedroom. The microphone recordings continued. Now he had both audio and video. 4 nights, nothing? On the 5th, the hallway camera detected movement at 3:41 a.m. Daniel opened the file. A green, grainy night vision image. An empty hallway. Studio door on the left, bedroom door on the right. At the far end, the staircase going down. At the 17th second, a barely perceptible change. Not movement, not a figure. A shadow. A shadow on the wall by the staircase that had no business being there. It appeared slowly, as though something were ascending the stairs. Growing, stretching, taking on contours that could be called human, if not for the proportions. Too narrow, too long, arms hanging lower than they should. And then it stopped. Just stood there. A shadow without a source, cast by something the camera couldn't see. The recording lasted 14 minutes. For all 14 minutes, the shadow stood motionless. And then, in one frame it was there, and in the next, it wasn't. It didn't retreat, didn't withdraw. It simply vanished. Daniel rewound and noticed something that, in his own words, made his breath catch. On the parallel audio recording from the hallway microphone, at the exact moment the shadow appeared on camera, breathing was captured again. The same rhythm. 4 seconds between breaths. But this time there was something else. Between the breaths, a quiet sound. Rhythmic, like tapping, or like counting. 1, 2, 3, and then breathing again. The next day, Daniel called his sister Mara. He didn't tell her about the recordings, just asked if she could come stay for a couple of days. He needed a witness. Mara arrived Friday evening. She later told everything she saw, first to the police, then to journalists, and then to a lawyer when she tried to obtain the documents after Daniel disappeared. The first evening went fine. They had dinner, talked, watched TV. Mara went to sleep in the guest room on the first floor. Daniel, upstairs in his room. Around 2 in the morning, Mara woke up. She couldn't explain why. There was no sound, no light. just a feeling, as if someone were standing in the room. She lay there with her eyes closed, listening. Silence. Then she opened her eyes. The room was empty, but the door she had definitely closed before bed, was ajar. Through the gap, the darkness of the hallway, and in that darkness, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet Mara couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was looking at her. She got up, closed the door, lay back down. She didn't fall asleep until morning. In the morning, she told Daniel about the door. He nodded as though he'd expected it and showed her the recordings. Mara watched the video with the shadow, then listened to the audio with the breathing, then sat in silence for a long time. Did you check if it could be pipes somewhere? Or echoes from the neighbors? She asked. Mara, Daniel said, I spend every night in this house. I've checked everything. Pipes, ventilation, the foundation. I called a plumber. I called an electrician. I checked for hidden cavities in the walls. And nothing? The house is clean. Physically, there is nothing in this house that could explain these sounds, but I record them every single night. He paused, then added, and every night, they're closer. The second night, Mara decided not to sleep. She sat in the living room with the laptop, monitoring the camera feeds in real time. Daniel was upstairs, also awake, watching his own setup. At 2:14 a.m., Mara saw it on the screen, the hallway camera on the second floor. The shadow, the same one, it appeared by the staircase, slowly, like a photograph, developing. Elongated, wrong, motionless. Mara called Daniel on the phone. He was sitting 10 meters from the spot where the shadow stood on the wall. Do you see it? She asked. I see it, he replied. But I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking straight at the wall. And? A pause. There's nothing on the wall. The shadow is only visible on camera. Mara froze. On the screen, the shadow was absolutely distinct, dense, solid with clearly human contours, and Daniel was standing right there, looking at the same wall and seeing nothing. Daniel, get out of there. Wait, he said. I want to check something. She watched it on the screen as he walked toward the wall, extended his hand. His fingers touched the spot where the shadow was, and the shadow shifted. It didn't flinch, didn't vanish. It shifted, slowly, smoothly, as if it flowed half a meter to the right away from his hand, and stopped. The wall is cold, Daniel said. Right where the shadow is, the wall is 3 or 4 degrees colder. Daniel, get out of there, now! He didn't respond. On the screen, Mara could see him standing in front of the wall, and the shadow standing beside him. And at one point, Mara swears she saw this. The shadow turned. It had no face, no head in the conventional sense, but the upper part of the silhouette changed its angle, as if the shadow looked at Daniel. I can feel it, Daniel said quietly. Mara, it's standing right next to me. I can't see it, but I feel it, like pressure, like the air has become heavy. On the screen, the shadow began slowly stretching toward Daniel, reaching for him as if it wanted to touch him. Daniel, get out! He jerked and ran for the stairs. On the screen, the shadow vanished instantly, like a light switched off. They spent the rest of the night in the car in the driveway, engine running, heater on. Mara begged him to leave. For good. Sell the house, rent an apartment, anything. Just don't stay. Daniel refused. You don't understand, he said. If I leave, I'll never find out what it is. It will haunt me for the rest of my life. Not the thing itself, the thought of it, the not knowing. And if you do find out, what then? Daniel looked at the house. The windows were dark, an ordinary house. White walls, blue roof, small lawn out front. Then I'll know, he said. Mara left the next morning. She called him every day. For the first week, he answered. But before she left, Mara noticed something she only mentioned during her police statement. She didn't want to frighten Daniel, or maybe she didn't want to frighten herself. That morning, before getting in the car, she went to the bathroom, washed her face, looked in the mirror, fixed her hair, and she was about to walk out when she saw it. In the mirror, in the reflection, the door behind her was closed. She distinctly remembered leaving it open. She turned around. The door was open. She looked back at the mirror. Closed. She blinked. In the mirror, the door was open again. Everything normal. Mara stood gripping the edge of the sink, trying to understand what had just happened. Maybe a glare, maybe the angle, maybe her brain, overloaded by the night's events, simply inserted the wrong image. It happens. The brain fills in visuals based on expectations, and sometimes it gets it wrong. She decided that was exactly what had happened, a perceptual error, nothing more. But in the car, already on the highway, she caught herself unable to stop checking the rearview mirror. Not the road behind her. The back seat, which was empty. Of course it was empty. She checked 3 times before pulling out. And still she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was sitting behind her. Quietly, patiently, not moving. She turned the radio up to full volume and didn't look in the mirror again until she got home. From the emails Daniel sent Mara, we can reconstruct the timeline of his final 2 weeks. November 12th. The shadow appears every night, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always in the hallway. But yesterday I spotted it on the living room camera. First time, it's coming downstairs. November 14th. The voice is clearer now. It's not just one word anymore. It's saying a phrase. I recorded and amplified it. The phrase, I'm behind you, don't turn around, repeated 3 times. Then silence. November 17th. I found something on the recordings today that I hadn't noticed before. The breathing I capture at night, it's synchronizing with mine. When I inhale, it inhales. When I hold my breath, it holds. I checked against recordings from previous nights. It wasn't like this before. The rhythm was different, but now it matches, as if it's adapting. November 19th. I don't look in mirrors anymore. Yesterday I was brushing my teeth and saw in the reflection, behind my shoulder, in the doorway, an outline. Not a shadow on the wall, an outline in the air, as if the space in one spot were slightly denser than the space around it. I turned around, nothing, looked in the mirror. The outline was still there. It was standing 2 meters from me. Now, 1 meter. closer every day. November 21st. Mara, I need to tell you something. I'm not afraid anymore, and that scares me more than anything. I used to feel fear, anxiety, the instinctive urge to run, but now nothing. As if I've gotten used to it, or as if it wants me to get used to it. Last night I was sitting in the studio, and the breathing was right by my ear. I heard it without a microphone, without headphones, just breathing behind my right shoulder, and I didn't turn around. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to. I felt calm. Mara, that's wrong. I know that's wrong, but I can't help it. November 23rd, the last email, short. Today I looked in the mirror. The outline was standing flush against my back. I could see the hair on the back of my neck moving from its breathing. And I understood something, Mara. I understood why it kept saying, "Don't turn around." Not because it doesn't want me to see it, but because if I turn around, I'll see that there's nothing behind me. And then I'll have to look in the mirror again and realize that what stands behind me is not something standing in the room. It's something standing inside me. And it always has been. Between the last email and his disappearance, 2 days passed. What happened during those 48 hours, no one knows. But on Daniel's computer, police found his search history from November 24th. The queries came one after another, minutes apart, going deeper and deeper. First, infrasound effects on the psyche. Then, 19 hertz frequency fear. Then, can a person hear their own subconscious? Then, shadow people hallucination or real. And the last search made at 11 p.m. What to do if what you see in the mirror is no longer you? After that, no activity, no calls, no messages, no searches. Only the cameras continued recording empty rooms, and the microphones continued capturing silence. Silence and breathing. On November 25th, Mara called the police and asked them to check Daniel's house. He hadn't answered his phone in 2 days. The officers found the house in perfect order, doors locked from the inside, windows shut, all the equipment, cameras, microphones, computer, running, recordings proceeding normally. Daniel was not in the house. His car was in the driveway, keys on the kitchen table, phone charging in the bedroom. All his belongings were in place, clothes in the closet, shoes by the door, every pair. He left a house locked from the inside, without clothes, without shoes, without keys, without a phone. Or he never left at all. The police seized the recordings. Most of them were never made public. But one of the officers working the case anonymously shared a single detail with journalists. On the final recording from the hallway camera, the one running the night of the disappearance, the following is visible. At 3:22 a.m., Daniel steps out of the bedroom. He walks down the hallway toward the staircase. His movements are calm, relaxed, like a man going downstairs for a glass of water. He doesn't look back. He descends the stairs and moves out of the camera's frame. And at that moment, for 1 second, for one single frame, 2 shadows appear on the wall by the staircase. One, Daniel's, normal, proportional, moving down the steps. The second, motionless, elongated, standing in the exact spot where Daniel had just been, as if something had stayed in his place, or as if something had finally taken his place. They never found Daniel Roche. The case remains open to this day. The house was sold in 2020. The new owners, a family of 4, still live there. No complaints, no incidents. But here's what's interesting. I found this while going through the documents. Mara filed a request to obtain all of her brother's recordings. She was denied. The recordings were classified as evidence in an open case, but they did share one detail with her. On the audio recordings from the final night, after Daniel went down the stairs, the microphones continued capturing sound for another 40 minutes. Breathing, steady, calm, 4 seconds apart, indistinguishable from the breathing Daniel had been recording for weeks. With one exception, technicians compared the frequency profile of this breathing with the samples Daniel had captured at the beginning when he first discovered the anomaly in his work files. The frequencies didn't match. The breathing from the final night was different. It matched Daniel's own breathing. I don't know what lived in that house. Maybe nothing. Maybe Daniel Roche, a talented sound engineer with heightened anxiety, simply pushed himself to a nervous breakdown and walked away. People disappear. There isn't always an explanation, but here's what doesn't add up. Doors locked from the inside, shoes by the door, keys on the table. If a person leaves, they open the door. If a person loses their mind and runs out barefoot in November, the door stays open. But Daniel didn't open the door, and he didn't climb out a window. Every window was latched shut from the inside. Police checked every possible exit from the house twice. Not a single one had been used. A man vanished from a sealed room, without a trace, without an explanation. And I keep thinking about something else. I keep thinking about what he wrote in that last email. That it wasn't outside, that it was inside, and that it had always been there. And here's what won't leave me alone. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's an empty space behind you. You know that. You're sure of it. And you have no reason to turn around. But you want to, don't you? That feeling, the urge to turn around when there's no one behind you, where does it come from? Why do we feel it? Evolutionary biology says it's a remnant of an ancient instinct, a defense against predators that crept up from behind. But maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe we turn around not because we're afraid of what's standing behind us, but because we know. If you enjoyed this story and want to find out what the police actually found on those recordings, subscribe to the channel. In the next episode, I'll tell you what happened to Mara 3 months after her brother's disappearance, and why she no longer lives in a house with mirrors.